All right, everyone. So we might get started. So thank you all for joining us today. And thank you so much, Elaine, for hosting this webinar for us. I'll just kick off with an acknowledgement of country that I acknowledge that I'm hosting this webinar from the lands of Dharawal people. I pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging, and celebrate the diversity of Aboriginal peoples and their ongoing cultures and connections to the land. I also acknowledge the traditional custodians of the various lands on which you are all on today, and the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people participating in this webinar. Feel free to post the country that you're on in the chat. And so, yes, let's kick off. I'll hand it over to you, Elaine.
Excellent. Stealing my thunder. So I'd also like to acknowledge the traditional owners, and where I am out at Penrith is the Darug Nation. So thanks for that. Yes, Mum, thanks, Brooke, for the time, and thanks everybody for joining us today. Feel free to ask questions as we go throughout. We'll make this as fun and as incredibly challenging as possible, I suppose, when we're talking about women, our finances and superannuation in general, I suppose, when we're talking about that. So got to do my legalese thing. So just the following information I will be providing is of a general nature only, does not take into account your personal needs, circumstances or requirements. If you do need to have any of those, then please I direct you to our website, which is www.activesuper.com.au, before making any financial decisions and reading our target market determinations. So today, what I just wanted to let you know, if you haven't heard already, is Active Super are currently in the throes of a merger with a sister company in Melbourne that looks with Victoria, that looks after the councils and local government down there. And we're very similar in size and the nature of the funds that we do look after. So we have defined benefit schemes and accumulation funds, as which what we look after. And they're also public offer, so which means that you don't have to work at local government to be able to join either of the funds. We are public offer to anybody that wants to join, which hence is why Active Super changed their name about 18 months ago from Local Government Super, because we were public offer for over the last 10 years and a lot of people weren't aware of that because we had local government in the name. Therefore, we became Active. And now with the impending merger, we're not quite sure whether there'll be a name change or which name we'll keep or what will go forward. But I can tell you that there will be benefits for the members because we are an industry fund, that all our profits go to members. What we charge you for our management fees is basically what it costs us to run the fund divided by the members. So the more members we have and the more funds under management will be a benefit for all of us by trying to drive those membership fees down. So the main question that we're looking at today is, well, why do women have less in superannuation? You know, there's so many different reasons. One, we're probably not paid the same level. There's still a pay gap. There's a pay parity gap. There's still an employment education standard of not being in the same job and being the same pay. We have the career breaks. We tend to stop for either children, as our parents are aging and caring needs, and disablement, or just a choice of working life. So on average, women currently retire with approximately 47% less super than what our male counterparts are. And therefore, there's also a super gap, because if we're paid a percentage of superannuation into our super accounts from our income, that's going to be reduced if we're not paid at the same level. So the pay gap between men and women has been around 18% for the last 2 decades. By the time women get to retirement age, this gender pay gap translates to a much bigger superannuation gap. Hence, we have the 47% difference between women. So women retire with an average of about $85,000 less super than what their male counterparts do. Excuse me. The gender super gap is one reason that an estimated 40% of older single retired women live in poverty and experience economic insecurity in retirement. And these older single women are more dependent than men on the age pension. They're also the fastest growing cohort of homelessness people in Australia. Without getting too down, these are changing, of course, and there's ways that after today's discussion, hopefully you'll see that it's not all doom and gloom, and things are picking up and changing. It's just that some of the choices that you have of how you can do that within your superannuation at least. So one of the big questions we tend to have asked of us is, well, how much will I need to live? Like, how much will I need when I get into retirement? And with superannuation organisations, insurance and banks, we have a peak body called ASFA. That's the Associations of Super Funds Australia. And they've done a retirement standards report in conjunction with Westpac, and they've looked at different kinds of retirement. So they've looked at if you had, say, a modest retirement, or if you had a comfortable retirement. And the differences between the two are a modest retirement, just showing the figures here of a single person would need to be able to spend the bare necessities, the basics, not going out on a regular basis to restaurants to eat out, eating at home more regularly, not going on domestic holidays every couple of years, not having the highest health insurances into retirement. And as you can see, this is for single and a couple. So a modest is basically what you'd need to fund your bare necessities, your needs of what you have to have, not so much your wants and your luxuries. And the comfortable retirement is more, increasing the amount of money that you need for other things, such as an overseas holiday, perhaps every couple of years, having the highest private health insurance, looking at being able to eat out on a regular basis in restaurants or takeaway rather than having to eat at home. So to give you an analogy, on one of the websites that the Retirement Standards is found as either ASFA, you could also look at Money Smart, which is a government website, and have a look at the same ASFA retirement standard amounts. And you can also come and look on our website at Active Super. But to have a look at that as an analogy, I'll put it into plain speak, I suppose. Let's think, if you like a bevy at night, a modest retirement would be cask wine. A comfortable retirement would be bottled wine. And I'm not being facetious. That's actually an example that's on the website, just to give you a bit of context on what it is. Another one would be, think of entertainment. So a modest retirement you'd need for free-to-air TV. Comfortable would be a streaming service. So you might want to look at Binge or Disney or something in relation to that. And then you'd say, well, if that's how much I need to be able to spend to live, how much am I going to need to be able to provide for that income? And for the same purposes, this is what we're looking at. So for that $31,000 roughly for a modest retirement, you'd need $100,000. And you'll notice here that the single and the couple under the amount of money needed for a modest is the same figure. This is not a typo. This is because these assumptions are assuming that you're at retirement age, which is currently 67 years of age, and that you own your own house and you're eligible for the pension. The age pension entitlement is just above that requirement that is spoken here. So it's just above, it's just under $30,000 a year for a single person. So therefore, you'd only need the $100,000 to make that difference to be able to satisfy a modest retirement for that difference on the amount over the whole year. Whereas if you needed a higher amount of money to live on that comfortable income, rather than have the $50,000, what would it need to be able to provide for that? And that'd be a lump sum in your superannuation or savings in your bank account or other investments outside of super of around $595,000. So just give you an idea, when you've heard probably in the past people say, unless you've got $1 million in retirement, you're not going to be able to, in your super, you're not going to be able to retire. Well, that is a furphy, and it depends on each and everybody's individual situation, because everybody has a different requirement of what they'd like to be retired on or what they could possibly survive on in relation to what their funds are and how much they spend. So the other big question, of course, is, well, when can I get my hands on the money? And generally, it's based on when you're satisfying what they call a condition of release. Now, a condition of release is made up of twofold of things, and it depends on when you're born. So generally, everybody is coming up to the end of the scale now because of the years that we're in. But if you're born prior to 1960, the 1st of July, then you would have been able to access your retirement from your superannuation from 55 years of age and retire from the workforce. Each year after that, your money is preserved until you satisfy that condition of release. So the worst case scenario in that regard would be anybody born after the 1st of July 1964 is 60 and retired from the workforce to be able to access all of your superannuation with no mandates of how much or how little you're allowed to take out. And what I mean by that is you could still be working after 60, but you're only satisfying half of that condition of release. And that's where you'll hear things or products called transition to retirement income streams, where you can access some portion of your money, but majority of your money would still be held in superannuation until you satisfy both requirements of at least 60 and retired from the workforce. Now, generally, once we receive our superannuation, we're looking at different ways that the tax affects it. Now, superannuation is a long-term investment. We know that. It's there for a specific reason. It's there for your superannuation for your retirement. And the whole idea is that the government would like you to have the higher amount that you possibly can have, because they want you to be able to supply for yourself in retirement rather than be a full burden on the age pension. But the age pension will always be there as a safety net to be able to protect you or use as one of the silos that you look at when we get up to retirement. But there are other ways that you can benefit yourself. Automatically, the employer pays from $1. The employer has to pay what they call superannuation guarantee. Now, that currently is standing at 11% of your ordinary time earnings. So what your gross earnings are, 11% will be going into your superannuation account each month, and generally that's either a fortnightly, weekly payroll, but they have to pay the 11% on your ordinary time earnings. That will go to 11.5% next July, and then it will go up to 12% in 2025, where it was intended to be if it hadn't been frozen in the past. Now, in addition to increasing that, you can contribute on top of your superannuation, and there are a couple of different ways that you can make those contributions into your super on top of the employer component. Now, if you do nothing, generally there are different ways that you can contribute into your superannuation to be able to benefit from that. And one of those is a well-known one, I suppose, because a lot of people tend to use it, but it's not necessarily for everybody. And hopefully today I'll be able to explain to you the different options available to you, depending on where you sit. So what I mean by where you sit is, what tax do you currently pay on your gross income? Now, in Australia, we don't just tax you a set rate. Your total superable salary or your total gross income is put over the taxable margins. And what I mean by that is, if I just use an example of $100,000, I'm not assuming people all pay $100,000. It's just a nice, easy figure for me to use. But let's assume you've earned $100,000. The taxable income you would be in would be the margin of around 32.5 cents in the dollar. Now, these figures I'm quoting are not taking into account the Medicare levy and Medicare levy surcharge, which is the additional 2%. So this is where a majority of Australians sort of sit. So what that means is, on your $100,000, the first $18,000 is tax-free. And if I'm looking at this left-hand side of the presentation at the moment, 18,000 to 45,000, you're paying 19 cents in the dollar. And then 45 to 120. This is where the majority of Australians tend to sit. You pay around an average of 32.5 cents in the dollar tax. That's how your marginal tax rates work. So what happens is, you're paid your $100,000, your employer takes out the tax they have to pay, they send it to the tax office, whatever's left is what's in your pay packet that you can spend. The way that you can contribute into superannuation are twofold. The first one that I'll talk about is known by 3 different names. So it's, excuse me, it's known as a concessional contribution. It's also known as a salary sacrifice. It's also known as pre-tax contributions. Now, what these contributions are these are contributions that come out of your salary before your salary has had tax deducted from it. So if you had your $100,000 salary again, and you said to your employer, I'd like to pay $10,000 over the year as salary sacrifice into my super. And you can nominate how much you want to do. That's up to you and your employer. That's the contract you sign with them. Now, if you said $10,000 a year, your taxable income is still 32.5 cents in the dollar, but you're only paying tax not on 100,000, but on 90,000. That $10,000 that you're putting into your superannuation, it goes into super. And as you can see here, the tax that you pay on that is 15 cents in the dollar. So you could be, in effect, almost minimizing your tax to half the rate, or saving yourself approximately 17% on that proportion of money. That's a benefit. And the government give you that benefit because, again, they'd like you to put it into superannuation for your retirement. On the other hand, what you have to consider is any contributions that you do pay into your superannuation, whether it's your contributions or the employer's contribution or the interest that you earn, that money is generally held until you satisfy that condition of release. So think of it as being one of the longest fixed term bank accounts you've had, because that money is going to be held, depending on when you're born, worst case could be after 60 and retired from the workforce. But it's there for a specific reason. So that's what you're accumulating. The other way you can make contributions into your superannuation is after tax. So that's post-tax, non-concessional contribution, or after tax. And you may want to do this because there are benefits that you can get additional contributions paid for by the government, called a co-contribution. And I'll go into a little bit more detail in a moment, just to give you an example. But this is where you make a contribution of money that's already had tax on it. So money that you've already had put into your pay packet and put into your bank account, money that you've got from an inheritance, money that you've got from an investment property income, money that you've got from franked dividends in shares. It's already paid the tax on it. So therefore, when you make that contribution in, there's no additional taxes being paid to it. Whilst your money's sitting in your superannuation, you're not taxed that money that's already been taxed, but any interest you earn is taxed at the marginal tax rate. At the super tax rate. So if that money was sitting in a bank account and you had $1,000 in your bank account and you earned $20 interest, you'd be taxed on the $20, not the $1,000 balance, because you've already paid tax on it. Whilst it's in superannuation, if you earned $20 in the superannuation account, you only pay 15%, not your marginal tax rate. So that's the benefit again. It's the money that's sitting in there earning you interest as you're accumulating. That compounding rate is being taxed at a reduced rate also. So that's the other benefit of superannuation in comparison to a bank account. You just have to remember the liquidity of being able to access it. And then once we get to retirement, the investment earnings in our pension phase are tax-free. So that's why people look at keeping their money in the superannuation environment when they're getting up to retirement age. And these are all things that we can help you with along your journey. So whether you're just starting out in work, whether you've come into some money through an inheritance, or you've sold investment properties or anything like that, you can use the services of the superannuation for myself at the client relationship manager role, where I can give you general information. So I'm not giving you personal advice, but I can tell you the rules and regulations of how things work and how products work. And then we can always refer you to a financial planner, so you can always get that personal advice as well. So there are limits of how much you can actually contribute each year into your superannuation, and these are government limits, so it doesn't matter what super fund you're in. This is the same for everybody. If you were doing those salary sacrifice contributions, just bear in mind that there is a threshold. It is a large threshold. It's $27,500. But it also includes the money that the employer is paying on your behalf. So at the moment, that's the 11% they're also paying. Again, you're on $100,000 income. The employer's already paying $11,000. So you'll only be able to contribute up to $16,500 through salary sacrifice, if that's what you wanted to do for that each and every financial year. A non-concessional contribution is an after-tax contribution. And this is generally what people tend to do when they're building up their superannuation as they get closer to retirement. But you can have a limit or a threshold of non-concessional contributions per financial year of $110,000. And there are ways that you can actually increase that by bringing forward 2 years and having a total of $330,000. There are other ways that the government will let lower account balances, and this is again where us as females fit in, because we have the lower account balances when we get up to retirement, and because you may tend to find that as you're getting closer to retirement, you become empty nesters, even if you have children. So you're now have more freer money, that it's now possible for you that you'll be able to contribute at a higher rate than you possibly could have earlier when you're paying just day-to-day living expenses or debts. So there are ways that you can actually contribute through salary sacrifice with after-tax monies by using any of those unused thresholds that you may not have used. And you can go back as far as the last 5 years. So if you haven't done anything at all and you're coming to a little bit of money and you're coming up that you wanted to be able to access that minimization of tax, then there are ways that we can look at doing that through this carry forward strategy. Rather than go through that in minute detail, because it can be quite confusing, just know that it's an option available to you, that you do have access, that if you had some money sitting in the account in the bank that you couldn't possibly make the contributions on a pay-by-pay basis as a salary sacrifice, but you come into some money, or if you had some money sitting in the bank and you wanted to make it superannuation money, then you may be eligible to access this carry forward strategy. So it's just a way to top up and get a tax advantage at the same time. Again, these are things that we can help you with at any time. Now, when I was talking about it could be beneficial for lower income earners, lower taxed income earners, to access some additional contributions by making a contribution after tax, what I was talking about was the government co-contribution. Now, this is for low income people that can generate benefits, which can either be people starting out in the workforce, itinerant casual workers that aren't at a higher pay level, or people that are just on decided to go onto a part-time wage as they're getting older and want to minimise the hours that they're doing at work. What you can possibly do is, rather than do the salary sacrifice, or in conjunction of both, but what you could do is, if your income, to get the maximum benefit out of this co-contribution option, is if you earn less than $43,445, that's this financial year, 2022-23, that's actually 2023-24, so it has to be updated. I do apologise for that. So that's this financial year we're currently sitting in. If your gross income is less than $43,000, for every $1 that you contribute into your superannuation account, the government will give you 50 cents. That's above and beyond any interest that you could be earning on your money. They'll only do that up to a maximum of $1,000 a year. And what that means is you're getting a guaranteed $500 for your $1,000 each and every financial year that you may be contributing that, whilst your income is less than the 43,000 threshold, or the threshold of the day for that financial year. Each dollar you earn above that $43,000 income, the amount you get back from the government reduces. So you may not get, if you're on $50,000, you may not get the full $500. You'll get something slightly smaller, because you'll only be getting, instead of 50 cents for every dollar, you'll only get 48 cents, 47 cents, depending on what the reduction is. If you're earning more than $58,445, you're not eligible for the co-contribution. So that's where you'd look at, perhaps I'll do salary sacrifice, because then I can minimize my tax. So this is just an option that's available. This is something that sometimes I've looked at where sometimes grandparents, parents, people that have children starting into the workforce. I'll use me as an example. I've got 2 boys. They're older now, they're men, I should say. When they first left school and were doing uni and working in their part-time jobs, so McDonald's, and when they got older and they were starting to, work in restaurants and bars and things like that, I made a $1,000 contribution into their superannuation account, because they were guaranteed to get $500. Now, the other greatest investment known to man is compounding interest. So if you can't touch your money for a long period of time, and I've done this when my boys were younger, so they were 18 to when they were 21, when they were earning income to above the level that it doesn't satisfy for them now, but that money was going in. So $1,500 was going in. Their $1,000 contribution, well, that I contributed for them, and their $500 from the government. And that was going to compound to the next 30, 40 years for when they can access their money. Now, of course, they're probably not going to thank me for that, but that's going to be my little sweetener for whoever chooses the nursing home I have to go into, I suppose. But anyway, so all jokes aside, it is something to consider. If you can't pay the $1,000, it's anything that you contribute. The minimum is $20 over the year. So you don't have to make continual contributions. You might just have money sitting in the bank that you just want to make a contribution in, say, March or April of each year. You just have a look and you make that contribution. Again, you must understand that any money that you do contribute into your super will be held for retirement purposes. So until you satisfy that condition of release. Otherwise, it's another way that you could contribute and build up some money that will just continually grow for you and earn interest on you while it's perpetually just turning over until you can access it at retirement. The other way to protect our money, or to make sure our money is going exactly where it's intended. Now, as I said today, I'm talking to you about any information that's of general nature. So if you are not a member of Active Super, what I'd suggest you do is contact the superannuation fund you're with and find out what the administrative rules are behind what I'm about to speak about now. So in the event of your death, your money is, your super cannot be put into your will. So in the event of your death, if you do not have what we call a binding nomination registered to your account, so if you have nominated for a binding nomination in the event of your death, then the fund is the trustee that looks after your account. We will always pay it in the member's best interest, but we pay it as per the legal requirements, which means it generally would go to a spouse, de facto, child, interdependency relationship, same sex, or somebody that's financially or medically dependent on you. Because you cannot put your super in the will means that you can't tell a super fund where to make that payment to. You can, in effect, do it similarly by requesting that the account is paid to your estate. And then it's up to your executor to work out where it goes. So in other words, the fund can never be contested on where the money goes. A binding nomination overrides anything that the trustee would do. It also makes sure that it guarantees to go where you want it to go to. And it also makes sure that it's a nice, clean, quick process. Because if we have to look into it, the fund will look into every optional person that could be eligible for it legally. This can take time. I've been in super and finance for over 30 years, and I've seen some death benefits go and take over 2 years to be paid out. And I've seen it go to people that people were not intending it to go to because they did not have a binding nomination. Now, these rules I'm going to explain now are the administration rules for Active Super. We have what they call a lapsing binding nomination. Now, a lapsing binding nomination means it's timed. Ours lasts for 3 years. So once it's activated, it's 3 years. We will notify you about a month prior to expiring, asking you if you'd like to continue that on. What you have to bear in mind is our administration is very strict that when you're getting the form, it's the only paper form we still require. And the reason being is when you're signing the form on the back, you're signing it in front of 2 witnesses. Those witnesses don't have to be JPs for us. They just have to be over 18 and not a beneficiary. Once we've got that binding nomination, as I said, it lasts for 3 years and no one can override it. Some funds actually have non-lapsing. Some have a binding lapsing like us, but they may have different timeframes. So if you are not with Active Super, just get in touch with your super fund. If your spouse or your partner's not with Active Super, get them to get in touch with their super fund. It's the most important document you'll ever complete and fill in your life. If anyone's got any questions on that, please, as I said, just let me know. One of the other benefits that we have, yes, sorry, Matt.
I will, we just do have a question in the chat from Linda. It says, I wanted to go to my estate as I don't have dependents, but the binding nomination does not give me the choice. So how can I have it go to my estate?
Okay, on our binding nomination, so Active Super, their choice is on the third page, and you go right down to the bottom and there's a little tick box that says, I'd like to leave it to my legal representative. That's your estate. So you just tick that box and you put 100% for us. Again, you just double check with your superannuation what their administration process is. But if it's your mother, your father, or your parents, I should say, if it's your parents, if it's your grandparents, if it's the cattery down the road, if it's anyone specific that does not fit the requirements, then it'd be that legal representative box you'd be ticking, because you can't specify those other individuals through the binding nomination.
Thank you.
Excellent. So in relation to other benefits that you have within your superannuation fund, again, check. If you're not a member of Active Super, I'm not here to profess that Active Super is the best fund in the world. I'm just here to say, make an educated choice of which fund you think. I always refer people to the ATO Super Comparator. It's right because it's the Australian Taxation Office. It doesn't cost anything, and you can plug in up to 4 funds and they can do comparisons for you, showing you what the fees are, what the returns are, and what the insurances are, the 3 most important things when you're looking at superannuation. Most funds are very similar now. We're accumulation funds. It's like a bank account. Your money goes in, you earn interest, hopefully in the positive, and the other sweeteners that funds can offer are their reward programs, I suppose. So one of the ones that we have at Active Super is called Active Super Booster, and this is only eligible for Active Super members. So if you're not a member, you'd have to join to be able to access this. But this is something that we've partnered with a third-party organisation called Super Booster. And what it is you register online on our website, and I'll come to a QR code in a moment where you can use that as well. But you just register your Active Super member number, and then you register up to 7 cards that you spend money on. Now, they don't accept Apple Pay or PayPal at the moment, but once you do those cards, so your credit card, EFTPOS, any cards that you spend money on, there's around 300 partner retailers that change daily. They're adding on more and more, and they have different retailers. Whether you buy something online or whether you go in store, you don't have to do anything else once you've registered everything. It's just a set and forget. All it is spend the money. So if you go onto the Iconic, or you go into BWS, or you spend money, you'll go into the retailers and you'll have a look at what percentage they'll give you. But I'll give you an example. I think just off the top of my head, BWS is about 2%. So whatever you spend, either in store or online, you'll be accessing whatever you spend. The government, the BWS will pay 2% as a super contribution into your superannuation. It'll go in as a non-concessional contribution. So that's the one where you've got up to $110,000. So unless you're spending an awful lot of money, you're not going to breach your thresholds there. So it's just something that you could benefit for as part as a reward program that we have with Active Super. That's just money that you're going to earn. How do you know what you spent and what you've earned? Well, what happens is you'll get a statement every quarter, and that'll just be sent out to you saying, well, look, looks like you've been active with your superannuation. Here's a contribution that's gone into your account. So it's brilliant. It's just a little bit embarrassing when you have the same thing that you spent a lot of money on in the quarter when you get your transaction statement. But it's just it's a great incentive that if anyone is interested in looking at doing that. And the other benefits that we have are discounted health insurance. If you're interested in that with HCF, there's Go Get Car Sharing. There's 15% off Trip of White restaurants. So there's 18 different restaurants all around Sydney, and some of those are shown there on the website. So you can also get those added benefits in addition to the Super Booster by being a member of Active Super. So basically, just a little bit of homework, I suppose. Just get active with your super today. Have a look at where your super's invested. Get to know how the investments work so you can build it up if you'd like to. Stay on top of your super. Download the app that we've got on the website. You'd have to actually register for member online first. And once you've done that, you can go through, download the app, and then you've got your details of your superannuation on your phone, just like your bank accounts and everything else. You can see the money going in from your employer. You can see your investment rates. You can change your investment options. You can change basic details through there. And you can also access your statements and any form of communication that we have with you. You're probably all too young to be worried about this one, but we do run retirement seminars, and we do also do worksite visits for councils and local government. So keep your eyes out and see one of the 7 of us that look after New South Wales. And confirm who you want to leave for your super. So complete a binding nomination form regardless of which fund you belong to. So just remember, whatever part of your life you're in your working stage of life, or even into retirement, or even once you've retired, you can come and see us. These are the client relationship managers we have for New South Wales at Active Super, and these are our financial planners. They're based in Newcastle and Sydney and Wollongong, but we do service face-to-face the whole of New South Wales. And then we have every form of channel of active contact that you could possibly think of, from chatting to us online, coming into our offices, the education that we provide through our webinars in person, even on our team meetings. We can always do those. What's something new is we've got our chat online, but we've also got our WhatsApp chatbot, which is now open 24/7. It's AI intelligence, so it's a bit of a idiosyncrasy. It's AI, so it's only its infancy. So the more that you ask it and the more details it's going to be asked going forward, is you'll find that that's just going to be a great tool, because you'll be able to call us at any time of the day or night and be able to get a more detailed answer going through, without having to call us during office hours or wait till we come out to the work sites. And basically, as I mentioned earlier, member online, you've got the chat bot. You can also download the app. So we've got every form of communication you can think of, and you can always call our call centre, or you can contact me personally. So thank you very much. And if there are any other questions, I'm happy to take them now if we've got some time.
So we have a question from Natalie that says, how am I meant to contribute more when I'm already spending on kids, mortgage, life, etc.? You know, do you have any tips on that?
Yeah. I would look at which way, if you wanted to look at contributing. If you can't afford at this point in time, then that's a possibility, and that's an expectation that everyone seems to be living with at the moment because of this situation we're in. As I said, you could try and do what I did for my boys. Look at grandparents if they're interested in looking at parents of parents, or people that want to put money in for presents. It's just something to consider. The co-contribution is a really valuable thing. If you can get money from the government, I can guarantee you over the years that amount has reduced. You used to get a lot more than 50 cents for every dollar, and the thresholds were a lot higher. So as they're bringing those down, it's making it less and less eligibility to get that. But even if you don't have $1,000 to contribute for that year to get the co-contribution, if you could do the $20, you're still going to get a money that's going to be compounding and increasing. The earlier you start, even the smallest amount would be better than leaving it. So if you said, I do $10 a week now, rather than say, I'll leave it for 10 years and then I'll do $50, that $10 now will actually increase because of compounding interest a lot better for you, that if you can afford to contribute now. But I understand, again, I'm not preaching to the converted. If you can't afford it, you can't afford it. And it is money that you're tying up. So you do want to get rid of those non-deductible debts first, because you want to have it in a liquid environment. So if something happened. But if there is another way you could access it, whereas if you wanted to contribute and you haven't purchased your first home, you can use and access your money for first home super saver, but only for that. So be very, very careful. You don't want to be putting money in there, tying up for a lot of years. The other thing is, look, if you can't afford to actually contribute now, just have a look at what the employer's paying and have a look at where your money's invested. because depending on where you're choosing to have your money invested, that's another way that your money's growing. So make sure you're in the right investment option. Have a look at understanding how they work, how the assets are. Again, that's something that we're happy to go through and explain to you how it works. But basically, you need to have exposure to growth investments, the share market, if you have a long term to go, because you can ride out any volatility in the market. So don't be working with somebody and panic because markets are down at the end of the news. You see the All Ords are in red. And so you know, I'm going to change everything and put it into cash, because if you're a 20, 30, 40-year-old, you've just disadvantaged yourself because you're not going to be earning interest, because inflation's going to wipe out that any money that you think you're protecting. So if you're ever in any of those situations, give us a call. As well-meaning as friends and family and loved ones are, we have to keep up to standards, legal requirements, day-to-day basis with the jobs and the information we give out. So just contact us if you have any of those general questions. So hopefully that helps, Brooke.
Yeah. I'm not sure if you know this one off the top of your head, but there's a question from Linda saying, what does it cost to see a financial planner?
It depends on the actual detail of the fund, how much money you've got to invest with, and what you're looking at going into them for. So it's like going to a specialist or a lawyer, a solicitor. Your first consultation is free. It's not going to cost you anything, but you're not going to get a financial plan on your first consultation. So what you're paying for is the service. It's not the product. So a financial planner will look at everything. So if you go for a fully comprehensive plan, it could be a couple of $1,000, because it depends on, you know, you're looking at your cash flow requirement, you're looking at what you need to provide for that, if you've got any investments outside of superannuation, age pension, everything like that. If it's limited advice, like I just want to know how much insurance I need to have, I just want to know what investment I should be in, I've just got this inheritance, I just want to know what's the best way to do with it, could possibly be a couple of $100. It could be nothing. What I'd probably suggest is, if you're not quite sure if it's personal advice, come see us. We can help you with the general. And then when you get to that brink of it's personal, we can do the referral, and then you can find out what the cost is and still turn around and say, thanks a lot, I don't want to go forward. And so it's cost you nothing.
Perfect. Thank you. And then there's just another question from Rhiannon. It says, could you please re-explain a section of the non-concessional inputs? What you said about interest earned is taxed at 15%, but then once you get to retirement age, you don't pay tax.
Once you get into a pension phase, so if you get to retirement and you had $100,000 in your super, your $100,000 is tax-free to you. So that's paid to you. If you said, I'm going to take that money out and I'm going to put it into my bank account, and you earn $1,000 interest, you will pay your marginal tax rate on that $1,000. If it's still in superannuation, because you're going to still work, that's an accumulation phase. Any interest you earn, so if your $1,000 is sitting there, that's still tax-free. Your $1,000 is taxed at the super rate of 15 cents in the dollar. If you've retired and you bought a pension or an income stream with your $100,000, you're just moving it over into another account called a pension. You drain the balance of that. So your $100,000 is still invested for you, and you're just taking out what you're needing each year. Any interest you earn, so if you earn $1,000 in that pension phase, no tax. That's the benefit of having it in that. So it just depends on which phase of retirement where you want to put your money.
Awesome. Thank you. Now that's all the questions we have in the chat at the moment. If anyone has anything else, to quickly pop it in and we can ask Elaine while we've got up.
Or just grab my my email or my phone number. That's the call center's email, and I think our faces are above it, so I can't see if my direct number's on there. Is it?
Yes, your mobile number is on there as well.
My number's there too, so you're more than welcome to call me, and we can organise a team meeting or a phone call conversation. So that's not a problem either.
Oh, we just got one more question from Kerry. It says, how long a life are the super estimates required based on?
As in life expectancy?
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah, Kerry, good question. And as a female, it's one thing we win, I suppose, slightly. Women live longer than men, and at the moment it's around 86 years. But don't forget, you've got the age pension entitlement, and you could be eligible. You only need to be eligible for $1 of age pension to get the supplements that everyone aims for. You know, the reduced rates, reduced free license, medical, things like that. But you are income and assets tested, so you could possibly get either full pension or half pension depending on other investments you have. And if you leave at 60 or earlier, or even aren't eligible for the age pension because you've done so well with your superannuation and things that you don't need as much, then as you're aging, even if we're living longer, then you're accessing your money. Then you go back to the government and say, well, now I've only got this much, and you could be eligible for age pension at that time. So you're never going to have nothing. It just means that if you spend all your money, then you'll be going on the age pension, and hopefully by 86 plus. A little bit of history. I don't know if everyone's aware of this. Apparently somebody born today, not today, as in someone alive now, will be our first person to live to 150. How frightful is that? So, Kerry, if we're expected to live around 86, I think that's going to be blown out the water. So you'll be retired longer than what would be in our working life.
Wow.
I know. So not only do we live longer, by the way, that gap is reducing. I do have to point that out to my male counterparts. I don't know whether that's the extra stress or what, but yeah, the amounts reducing of life expectancy, but at the moment it's around 86.
Amazing. Well, that's all the questions. Thank you so much, Elaine. That was great. I know I learnt a lot that I didn't know as well. So really appreciate you joining us today for this webinar.
More than welcome. Thank you, Brooke.
Okay. All right. Well, we've finished up a little bit early, but thank you everyone, and have a great afternoon.
You too. See you later.
Thanks.
Stay safe.
Bye.